we're in San Antonio, Texas. We're downtown in Hemisphere Park. We're at Rerouted 210 Urban Winery with Jennifer Beckmann. It is exciting to be here. I cannot tell you. We've got three smiles all the way around.
So glad to have you.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'm going to go back 2009. You are in Chicago.
Mhm.
You're a somm. You're working in hospitality.
Correct.
You obtain your certification, certified somm, certified wine educator, and you come to Texas. You come to Texas and you work at some of the best wineries in the Hill Country. And you take them to the next level. We're talking Bending Branch Winery, Parasos, and Coleman.
Yes.
That's exciting. You change your chapter again and you decide to come and open Rerouted. Tell us about why Rerouted, why sustainability, and San Antonio.
Yeah, why San Antonio? Which I'm very happy about because I live here.
Yeah.
And I love it. But
So the running joke is that my husband and I got to Texas via the military, right? Military brought us here. The wine industry kept us here. And, I always tell people, like, a lot of people, when I got here, I had a sommelier-sized chip on my shoulder, and I was like, there's no way Texas can make great wine. And I went to, this is back in 2008, very young time in the industry, went to a handful of wineries, and, I walked away and was like, yeah, it's rough. I was ready to write off an entire industry. And by sheer happenstance, I picked up a flyer at, of all places, my local pizza place. I was living in Horseshoe Bay, right there at Marble Falls, and picked up a flyer for Parasos Vineyards. And that flyer was, this beautiful picturesque photo. And all it had was a list of what they grow. And the first thing I thought was, number one, these people are either mad geniuses or they are batshit crazy.
These are state.
and it
wines.
have you been out there?
It's gorgeous.
It's beautiful.
It is still my favorite property in the entire state of Texas.
It's like you're just far away enough, but you're just close enough.
Well, they have that German castle over top. Why it looks like you're in another world. It is like transplanting into, old Europe. And it, so I went out, I not only fell in love with the property, with what they were choosing to grow, I fell in love, deeply in love with their Albianco. It was the first wine that I had tasted in Texas that just blew my mind. And it was not even a matter of these people are doing it well for Texas. I was like, this is great Albianco, period, for any part of the world, which had already been one of my favorite grapes. And I, spent an entire day talking with Seth and Laura and just fell in love with what their mission was, the property that they were doing. And that was my first experience coming into a winery. So I joined that team and really, they were very upfront with me at the time. They weren't even open to the public entirely yet. They were opening if the kids weren't at soccer practice, right?
From that, yeah.
And I said, well, why don't we do this? Since they're like, we need somebody like you, but we're not really prepared to bring somebody like you on. And I said, why don't I'll do it for what you can afford. And I'll do it for what works for you, but you also have to let me do it the way I want to do it.
Wow.
And it was a really great opportunity to just learn and cut my teeth. And I worked with Seth in the cellar and in the vineyard and started a wine club from scratch and learned as many things that I didn't want to do in the future as I did well. And it was a really amazing learning opportunity at a super young part of the industry. I mean,
What year was that, Jen?
2009.
9.
Okay.
And we didn't even know how to pronounce Alianico. We would see
There's
it.
days I still do.
Yeah, we would see it, and I would think, well, it must be, it's here in Texas. It must be something, and it took a while.
And that's still, most people haven't heard of this variety. And, we have that curve, right? And that was a great example. That was my teachable moment that I was like, we have two different Cabernet Sauvignons, and they're both stunning wines. They're both beautiful wines. And every guest that walks through the door is like, I want Chardonnay and I want Cabernet, because that's what they're familiar with. And that's what I know.
What you know.
But we still found that while we tasted all of these varieties side by side, we were still selling Alianico 3-1. And you know, it's the education and it's the storytelling and it's helping open people's minds. And really, you know, that was the base philosophy for what we really wanted to do here. You know, and as you mentioned, I went on to work with several really great projects that really let me be creative with education and, you know, marketing and all of the things that, you know, showed me the entire time was still living here in San Antonio. So, you know, we always kid, but if you need a podcast recommendation, lady, I'm your girl. I drove an hour and a half each way to work for 13 years. And, you know, I loved this city. And I fell deeply in love with San Antonio early on. And my husband and I, we knew we wanted to stay here proper.
Mhm.
I always joke that, you know, again, uprooted, that's just disruptive. We weren't uprooted. We chose to be here and we chose to reroot ourselves and to lay down roots.
Incredible.
So we had new friends and new family, and you know, we gained all these relationships with projects that we deeply loved and we loved working with and on. So we wanted to bring that down into San Antonio, and again, then retell that story of what is a very rural proposition, which is always wine. Tell the story of wine growing, wine making, and do it in a really urban setting. So really, we just saw this open door and this need. A lot of wineries are so focused on Austin as what looks like a bigger market. And here in San Antonio very consistently comes up as the biggest food and wine purchasing or spending community in the entire state of Texas. And we just saw that need for more, not just more wine, but Texas wine in particular.
Incredible. How do you decide what comes in?
You know, it's what I like.
That's exactly.
Yeah, I had this
Exactly.
conversation at the winery yesterday, and another business owner asked me. They said, "What? How do you decide what your program is going to be?" And I said, "Well, you know, it depends on what's best in those moments." I said, "But you know, oddly enough, our first wines to sell out here were Carignan, Alianico, you know, Roussanne,
Yes.
the varieties that we love and we love to work with, we think best represent the state. You know, of course, we still get people that say, I want Sauvignon Blanc or Chardonnay.
Mhm.
And we go through the process of showing them things that aren't those varieties, but might have a lot of likeness.
Yes.
And, you know, it's just about education. It's about opening new doors for people, but helping them understand what it is about those wines that they love.
So what's your favorite grape these days that's coming up or you see
Oh,
for 2025?
well, one is in front of us now.
Okay. Well, I don't want to know yet. So I
Right,
taste
okay,
it.
all right.
Let's see how good our palate is. It's not my
Yeah, my heart is really, and my palate just always moves directly towards the Italian varieties.
Mhm.
So I love Montepulciano, I love Alianico, I love Sangiovese. These are varieties I think are really well suited for Texas, with a much longer list than what we're even seeing in the general market now. But Southern France, I think, is always the playbook for what I look to
Mm.
in Texas with Carignan, which one of the reasons I love Carignan is it's different here in Texas than any other part of the world.
Yes, you're starting to see it more and more now.
Yeah.
I don't know if Big Calais and French Connection has a lot to do with that, because that's the first place I had carrying on, and
Yeah.
now I see it multiple.
And it's been
very different.
grown. People have experimented with it for quite a while, but Pullman Cellars and Benedict Rhyme, this was the first project that I saw really embrace Carignan as really their state grape, you know, and what they wanted to put at the forefront of the program. You know, another variety, Mourvedre, which that's huge. You know, William Chris really championed early in the game. Again, you know, the expression that we get in Texas is really unique to Texas. It is different here than any other place that it grows in the entire world.
Angela and I catch ourselves comparing to the Texans.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because this is what we know when they have with that, when they.
Yeah.
Or Tannat
Yeah.
right now. We
Yeah.
had the Tannat from Uruguay, and
We start with Texas and how it tastes here, and it's incredible. It's unique.
It is very unique to Texas, and it helps. And you know, Tempranillo is a beautiful grape for Texas, no
Mhm.
question. We do it as well as, or you know, similar to Spain.
Yes.
But quite frankly, we're not doing it incredibly different from Spain. We can get a lot of typicity.
Yeah.
We're getting all the things that grapes should be, but it's not necessarily wildly variable from what you'll see, which makes it difficult to compete on an international market.
right.
Carignan is not treated this way anywhere in the world. We're really just seeing a very pretty, very unique expression of that grape here.
It's an incredible
So
song, it really is.
I'm always looking for those varieties that, are off the beaten path, but just make really thought-worthy and provoking wines.
It's also makes us go back and listen and want to learn. Okay, so that's the grape. Who are the parent grapes?
Yeah.
Where did they come from? And it's been an education. It really
It makes me want to drink more.
Yes.
Fair enough.
Okay, so speaking of
Okay.
wine and what's in our glass, and if you'll lead us through a tasting.
Absolutely. So, we all know what we call the 5 S's of the product, the process. And, when we look at wine, really what we're assessing, I tell people often that you've got to be careful when you assess on visuals because, we're really tempered. We're really kind of evolved to make a lot of determined judgment early on by vision. And often when we see color saturation of any sort, we start to apply properties that may or may not be there before you ever actually taste wine. So when we're looking at wine, you can tell really a lot of things. As you look, this meniscus out here where the liquid literally just meets the edge of the glass, we're not seeing a lot of variation in color.
No.
So that's a great indication that you'll see, when you get that orange glow or that bricky characteristic, that's really just an indication that you have some age on the wine. As we're looking at that color, we're getting some opacity, not 100%, but some decent opacity to it. It's starting to give me hints as to what the wine would be anyway. Not that if you're just enjoying wine, you're not necessarily trying to be deductive. So more than anything, as a consumer or as just enjoyment levels, you're looking for faults, flaws, notes of oxidation, color changes that are not healthy. These are things that you're going to find in that looking process. When we look, same thing at the legs, I frequently hear people really try to start to assess qualitative notes, and that's not necessarily true.
Do you mean like the alcohol levels? Because that's what I always said.
We're really seeing either sugar, residual sugar level, or the way that it adheres to the glass and comes down. We're really just starting to see the glycerol that's adhering to that edge of the glass. It's just giving you hints as to alcohol content, where the wine might come from. Cool or hot climate, which we know here is generally almost all hot climate.
Yeah.
So, again, I don't, put a lot of time and a lot of stock into looking at those factors as a consumer. One of the things that I think is probably the most important aspect of wine, when we swirl, what we're doing is really just, I would say, in addition to looking really cool,
Yeah.
like a big nerd, right? When we're swirling, all we're doing is expanding surface area in the glass. So you're exposing more surface area of the liquid to more oxygen. And what that oxygen is unlocking is actually that volatility of the alcohol. So that volatile alcohol is evaporating very quickly as you volatilize, and it carries piggyback molecular compounds that are odoriferous. So scent compounds, they come up and out of the glass. So I would say first, smell over the top of the glass. And here's a great cheat sheet. Cover the entire top of your glass with your foam. Swirl again.
This is not going to make you look cool or sexy, by the
No.
way. You're doing it.
And you will more than likely need a new shirt. So smell again.
Wow.
Entirely different range of scents. So we went from a wine that was incredibly tight. We were getting those kind of hot notes. And now we're getting cocoa and white pepper and violets and components that were really kind of very slim in that first range.
Wow.
The other smelling technique that Jen has taught me when you're wine tasting is to smell yourself. Right?
Yeah, that's your neutral point. You don't really smell
Neutral.
yourself. So kind of reset yourself. I always kind of just, that's my reset point. So when we're smelling, what's really important is that you lose yourself a little bit in wine. You really have to clear your mind, lose yourself in the glass, let memory take its course. Because as those odoriferous compounds come up to your olfactory, they grab that compound and they trigger in what's called the lock and key mechanism, visual context or memory connectivities. And if you can get a direct visualization and memory base, you get that moment in the wine. If you can, it doesn't exist. So even with diseases that impact your ability to make memory connectivity, like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, as you lose memory or the ability to make memory, you lose your sense of smell in perfect tandem. So when we get that contextual image, it's really important to really drive what you're now using as aroma, which then in turn helps create what becomes flavor. So flavor is really very much, almost 50-50 in feeling and what we assess as a feel to the palate, in addition to what we're giving contextually with odor identification. But when you look at things, when you have somebody telling you step by step by step, and you're getting those mental images as you're hearing it, it's difficult to not get those components in the wine as well.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I mean, this reminds me of Thanksgiving.
This is beautiful. The spice on it, the violets. You mentioned violets,
Yeah.
and I didn't get it till I covered it. And yeah, this is incredible.
Well, and it's also important, and my least favorite moment when I ask people, like, what do you smell or taste? And they say grapes. And I've never had a grape that tastes like this.
Yeah.
So I don't know what grapes are. I don't know what HEB you're shopping at, because that's not what I get. But, it's because we know that wine is made from grapes. It's the easy mental association to just say grapes. And we're going deeper than that. That's why I say you've really got to lose yourself in the process a little bit. Let your brains dictate what's happening.
Help when you're running classes, get people out of their mind, especially ones that aren't normally doing wine tasting, because I feel like that's why a lot of people shy away from it, is they're so scared of saying the wrong thing.
Yeah, there are no wrong
And it's
answers.
so subjective. Like there's no, this is wine. Like
There's
we'll all
also-
have different smells and memories.
Very big category. When
Yeah.
we talk about the way that we interpret taste, we're built physically differently. We all have different memory receptors, both on our palate and in our nasal passages, that hold these memory banks, essentially.
Mhm.
So we all react to wine differently, or flavor in anything differently, whether it be a cocktail, a beer, food. Everything will process differently for each individual. So when we look at those combinations coming up together, it's a really individualized experience. So when we look also at wine, like I said, when you can really nail down something cherry, something like cherry is a big category. It is, is it natural cherry? Is it black cherry? Is it pink cherry? Is it maraschino cherry? Is it baked cherry? Is it a
Jolly
cherry?
Rancher cherry.
Is it Jolly Rancher cherry?
Or
Is
stewed on the stove
yeah,
top.
completely. We have such a varied range. I love to use things like scratch and sniff stickers in our classes, because you can, no question, identify what that is. It's nothing
not-
like the real thing.
Yeah.
Apple smell does not actually smell like an apple.
No.
I don't know why we've chosen that as our representation.
Watermelon is the word.
Yes, that's right.
But watermelon does not taste like this, nor does it smell like this.
We do still know that and identify that as
Yeah.
watermelon.
Yeah.
So I tell people, there's not a wrong answer. There's not this lexicon that you have to use when it comes to wine. And honest to God, the more fun you can get with it, the more fun your experience is going to be.
Mhm.
I was with a winemaker out in Napa years ago, and we're tasting through these wines, and exactly that. He said, I said, God, there's a candy that it's right there. It's right at the tip of my tongue, and I can't put my finger on it. And he said, it's a watermelon Jolly Rancher. I was like, oh, yeah. And that's such a memorable moment in wine for me, when we can make this connectivity that draws on an emotional memory bank. You're there. You're in that moment. I went from sitting in a cellar in Napa to being like a 12-year-old with my,
Yes.
pack of Jolly Ranchers, and that's fun.
Excited.
Yeah.
This is
I'm
beautiful.
well, I'm ready to
This is
taste it.
opened up.
All
This
right.
is
I'm
yeah,
ready.
absolutely right.
Everybody's favorite house. All right, let's sip. Cheers.
I want to hit 2 more.
When we're tasting wine, I think the component that we put the least amount of attention to up front, but it's probably most important in the process. Feeling. How does it physically feel to your palate? Are we getting bitterness? We say the word dry.
I'm getting the saliva. So
Yeah,
we've got
you're getting that
the
tannin is robbing. You're getting high acid, which is creating more saliva, but we're getting that dryness along the gum line at the same time.
Mhm.
That's the tannin structure. So these are the components of wine that are giving it structure, that are giving it literally like architecture. I would say it's the load bearing hall. These are the components that are giving you feeling on the palate. And that when it comes in confluence with aroma, starts to create flavor. So this is, do we want to know what this wine is?
I mean, I want to know. It's not, when I look at the color, I thought it was going to be like a heavier, more tannic wine.
Yeah.
Which you said, don't rely on the color.
Yeah.
But I really was thinking, it looks to me like almost like a Zen. Like,
Yeah.
this is going to be very powerful. Then I take a sip. I'm like, whoa, there's the acid.
And you get delicate.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very
Elevated.
floral.
Yeah.
Floral though.
And it's really about let it open up a little bit. The more you'll start to pull in some of that soft floral component, lots of fruit up front, and the structure evens out a tiny bit. So, do we want to know?
Yes.
This is 100% Petite Bordeaux.
This is the winner.
This is the winner. So this is the wine that recently won the Texas Best of Show Red Wine at the San Antonio International Wine Competition, San Antonio Rodeo. This
Jen, you're being much too humble. This blew them away.
so this
So let me make sure I say that this blew people away.
was in the top 14 scoring wines of 1,050 entries. So to have Texas wines consistently, and we weren't the only that fall into that category, but
Yeah.
in that top 14 scoring section is amazing. We had 4 or 5 of that 14. And so it was a huge honor not only to fall into that category, but it was particularly a huge honor for me in that it fell into that category as a wine that we serve on tap.
Oh,
So this is a wine, it's the first time in the history of the competition that a wine using eco-friendly packaging or alternative packaging is placed in a champion round.
Which we are going to get to. But I'm going to look into the camera and say, because I've gotten some comments lately on my Instagram that people don't think Texas wine is good.
Uh-huh.
You have not had this wine then, but I would
Yeah.
put this up against anything. It's so like,
Yeah.
it's dangerous though, because this is very, very smooth.
Well, and we obviously we combat that all the time, and we challenge people.
definitely.
If you can walk out of here not loving at least one wine,
At least one.
then early on in 2009, I played this game with a lot of wine buyers also.
Yes.
And I will tell you, I won't name names until we have at least half that pass. But I walked into a well-known at that time restaurant in downtown Austin, and they were very, very big supporters of local agriculture. And you walked in their door, they had stickers and bump
Farm
stickers.
to table.
Yes, local ag, support local ag. And I came in and I said, the guy begrudgingly sat down with me, and it was 100% out of spite, I think, so I stopped calling. We sit down, and the first thing he said to me is, I think all Texas wine tastes like blue.
To be fair, back in 2009,
Yeah.
it wasn't that great. We didn't have
Wow.
people like you. I mean, we did. We had our pioneers.
Yeah.
It took us a long time to find the grapes that worked and then how to
Yeah.
work them.
But what I told him was that if that's your mindset going in,
But true.
everything's gonna taste like
It's
blue.
gonna taste-
Yeah.
You're knowing blue, so
Yeah.
if you can break that, and I told him, I said, and I pulled up my phone, which had photos of their front door. I said, if any of this is true, Texas is a massive contributor to the agricultural environment of the state. And you can't deny the numbers on the agricultural side. So if you're not going to support agriculture unilaterally, take all that crap down.
Down.
Right?
Yeah. Yes.
So he, fair to me,
Fair. Yeah.
gave me the slow clap, and he tasted the wines and he loved them. And he picked up several for the wine program there.
So was that with Carisso's when you were
Yes.
with them? Okay.
Yeah.
Because they do a good Montpellier.
Yeah.
That is the place I first had. My sister was a member there. I think she still is.
Yeah.
Many years later. And I like now whenever I see it, like Montpellier, please. That's all. Oh, I
Yeah.
love it so much.
Yeah.
Are you now finding you've had to combat this stereotype of Texas wine, which is we're still combating it outside of Texas and inside. I know Texans
Yeah.
who still won't go out to wine country. Well, just come with me. I will
Yeah.
take you to the places. Go to downtown San Antonio.
Yeah.
You will be a member. I don't know how many people we have brought here who become members.
Yeah.
Which we'll talk about later too. But are you now competing on the sustainability and the wines on tap? Because I will tell you, when I first walked in and I saw wines on tap, I had never seen that before, and I was a little snobby about it.
Yeah.
it didn't stop me from drinking the wine and then joining. So I have an open mind, but how's that with people coming in and they're not used to seeing the wines on tap?
Well, well, one of the, and a question I get frequently is, did you invent this? Are you the first? No, we're not even the thousand,
Yeah.
right? Tap wines have existed in Europe since taps have existed. So, the idea in European culture is that you keep your best agriculture in your community. The agriculture should feed the community. So it's not just about exporting everything for profit. It's about consuming and enjoying what grows in your direct vicinity. And that includes wine. So when you go to Italy, you go to France, it's not infrequent to find, these kind of little tap rooms or filling houses.
Yeah.
And, for years I'd hear people, oh, I went to this restaurant. I just got a weird little open carafe of wine. It was the best wine I've ever had. It was only €9. And I'm like, yeah, because that's meant to feed the community.
Yes.
Mhm.
You're
And
gonna
it's
keep it. Yeah.
coming on tap. And they don't put their worst wines on tap. They put the best what represents their place.
Wow.
And it is about just having that because culturally they drink a little bit all the time. They drink with lunch and they drink with dinner, and it's not about imbibing. It's
Right.
about letting it accent your daily life all the time.
Mhm.
So, frequently people go and they'll fill what they need for the day or the week or, and they'll fill it in reusable containers. There's no reason to have that level of waste.
Right.
And that's another problem.
Right. We
That-
talked about that. Tell us about your bottles, your growlers, how sustainability, how you have been working that program.
Well, and the reason you asked me why we decided to go this direction and, spending 13 years working with wineries out in heavy tourism districts, it's heartbreaking. If anyone ever gets the opportunity to go work on a bottling line, say no. It is awful. It is backbreaking work.
Yes.
It's loud, it's repetitive, it's miserable, but it's a necessary part of the cycle.
Yeah.
You spend a whole day doing this. You put hundreds of cases into, cold storage. You're putting it into chilled cellar space. You're letting it overcome bottle shock for months, and you roll it to a tasting room, and in the average tasting room, 40 to 60% of that wine is being poured into a glass within an hour of the time that you pop that cork. So it's, our glass is in very large components, single use receptacle. And 50% of the footprint of winemaking is actually carbon footprint is in glass. And, we don't make glass here in the United States. We have very low glass production in the United States. They estimate 4% of our glass product is actually made here. We're getting bottles from Mexico, from China, Ukraine. There's a lot of single-use glass product. In other parts of the world, it's not single-use because it goes through recycling. And it's an ecologically perfect product when it's recycled.
Mhm.
The United States, on average, as reported recently in the New York Times, gratuitously only recycles about 25% of its glass product.
Yeah.
And that 25%, the estimation is that the bulk of it is properly and effectively recycled because we put it on container ships. We send it to other countries to be recycled. And honestly, I was given one of the best answers I'd ever received. Very blatantly, I asked Recycling Center, why are you taking glass off the list with this many wineries in the vicinity? And he said, it's expensive. It's not just expensive to recycle glass, it's expensive because it's dangerous to insure your workforce.
Mm.
So that makes sense.
Absolutely.
And, he's like, it's just not economical for us to do. I get that. That resonates. Ways that we can get around that. I have the benefit of working with somebody else's money and product for a decade in kegging and didn't see the drawback. I never found the degrade point in the wine. I never saw transfer of exterior components to the wine any different than we would have in just individual bottle.
Yeah.
We don't keg for long-term aging. We keg for 2 years in a sitting or 2 years in a cycle at the maximum. I shoot for no more than a year and a half.
Yeah.
When we had the opportunity during the pandemic, I would say for science,
Science.
we bottled 2 cases of white wine, 2 cases of rosé, 2 cases of red wine, and we opened it over the course of 12 months, 16 months. we never found a degrade point for wine that was sitting in glass growler.
Okay.
And the key to growlers, you have to have, quality and airtight seals.
Mhm.
We check our O-rings. We make sure those O-rings are intact. And if we start to see wear and tear, then the program.
Yeah.
We do the cleaning on all of our glass. So you don't bring a glass bottle in and use the same glass bottle going out.
Right.
You bring that bottle to us. We put it through intensive sanitation. You take a fresh bottle every time you're here. So a lot of using these, we tell people, we've done the time, and we occasionally open these bottles that we've sat on to taste to see if people are, is it okay now? When do you think this was kegged? When do you think this was bottled? And we've not seen the degrade point. We actually opened, I'd like to say scientifically, but I was cleaning out my desk. And if you look under there right now, there's probably 3 cases of loose bottles just randomly hanging out, like samples, gifts, the wines that we've
Oh, the hazards of being in the wine industry.
And you look under my desk, it's a mess down there. And I cleaned up one day and we opened some bottles and I pulled a growler out that I had filled. And it's a wine that we could track back. We had not had on tap in 18 months. So that wine had at bare minimum been sitting under my desk for 18 months. Not temperature control, not properly
Just in
stored.
one of your
Gross.
growlers. Okay.
And we just happened to have our entire bar filled with wine club members. So we opened it up just to see. Blind. They opened it with me. And it was stunning. It was as beautiful as when they put it in the bottle.
I love that. Now, I will say whenever I bring home a growler, it lasts maybe a week. So
That is also the intention, right? And
it's not sitting there for
now,
2 years.
our wine club being a monthly subscription that fills, we utilize stainless steel growler bottles.
Okay.
And often people are like, how long will we keep it bottled? And I'm like, oh, you only got 30 days, lady. Like, that's all you got. And so
Drink it.
drink it now, come back and get your next one. And that was a big part of it too, was, something it always kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And I see it everywhere. We're so obsessed with ageability and cellaring, and it is a process that is sometimes beneficial, but more often than not always beneficial.
Mhm.
Right.
And, I was seeing people that were over aging massive amounts. I've done it myself. I bought every year. I go through and dump a case out of my cellar. And I'm just like, what was I doing? Why didn't I drink this?
Yeah.
And if we learned anything, during the pandemic, man, drink it while you got it.
Yes.
And I'm the first one that I'll just pull a bottle out. My husband will be like, oh, how much did that one cost? Which one is that? And I'm like, who cares?
We're gonna enjoy it. We're gonna enjoy it.
Yeah, we're just gonna hang out. We're gonna love this wine and love the moment, and that's what it should be about.
Yeah. I think I have 2 bottles.
And,
Okay.
so Jen, these are your growlers.
Yes.
Tell us about each one and the program that goes with them.
So the vast majority of the wine that we produce on tap. We start from a nitrogen-based system, which keeps the wine fresh. You never risk getting a wine that's been oxidized. So we do glass growler. Again, has a really tight O-ring seal. So the bottle itself stays airtight until you open it. Just like any wine, once you open it, you're on the downward slide. It's not magic. It's not going to keep it fresh. But while it's fully intact, it'll last indefinitely.
Okay. Because I actually have a bottle of the Petit Verdot at home that I have not opened yet, obviously, or I would have known this right away.
You were all good. Yes.
Okay.
Now we do under our label here, we tag the line with what's in the bottles. We have front artwork, back artwork that we tie onto your bottle, so you know. This is a wine that we released under a little side label for us for Muertos Festival. So for the Day of the Dead, we did a male and a female version wine using the traditional sugar skull.
Love it.
Our stainless bottles, we do sell in general, but we gift these with our monthly wine club membership. So that our club members can use this once a month, come in, that way we have 0 packaging waste. So stainless steel, double wall insulated.
And I see pictures, people take this growler everywhere.
750 milliliters.
Yeah, in the
Yeah,
mountains.
that's been a lot of fun. We started to get photos back from people, and that was a blast. I was like, I love that. Of course, here I went last October, not this October, last. I went to Italy and I took my growler. I'm the worst one to travel with my growler. I never take pictures. I never actually have it, but I was filling it with water while we were going around town. And my husband said, well, we're going to have to get the picture in the door. And I was like, what door? And he's like, our hotel room door.
Yes, yes.
I was like, why? He said, because we're in room 210. So the 210 is the area code for
Yep.
San Antonio. And the idea was that, again, we wanted to represent a very distinct sense of place and who we were serving, what part of the community we're serving, and that was San Antonio. So that area code 210, wherever it may be, if we ever choose to open more locations, it can
Love it.
change
I love
with where we go.
I love it. I love it. That's great. Okay, so any more questions?
I just wanted to quickly touch on, because just hearing you as always, I'm blown away by how you educate people. And I've attended several of your classes. So tell me what's one your favorite class to do? I know which one my favorite was to attend. And then if you had just unlimited funds, sky, oyster in the skies, pie in the sky, what is the class you would want to do? Because you're so good at education.
Oh, well, my favorite topic is not just understanding wine from vine to bottle. It's understanding your physiology and your mentality and how that interacts with wine. So the idea of, what happens in our brain when we look at wine, what's happening, how do we maximize that experience? I was called mental yoga. How do we make wine better to us on our palate by using our thought process? So my favorite class to teach, hands down, is Good Sense.
That's the one that was my favorite.
I love this one. It's one thing to talk to people. It's another thing to talk at people.
Yeah.
And it's the idea that we do education. It's always about letting people learn on their own volition. I want people to learn on their own terms, and I want people to learn with real-time experiment in their hands. And we don't generally tend to learn well unless we're experiencing. So we try to make that a really fun tactile experience.
Okay, so part of our big mission for starting Amigas and Vines, just so you know, is we really do want to make wine more fun, more approachable for people. And we thought, okay, if I am going into the hill country or anywhere and all I can do is stop at a gas station, what is something I can pick up? Or if you're like me and your mom at home and you just got something like cheese that's lying around, that's what I carry. What could we pair with it when we go out? Because I don't always have like beautiful cheeses and crackers.
Yes.
I have things like this.
Well, I love that you asked that because, my palate, I love to think that I have this complicated palate, but legitimately I eat like a fourth grader. And that's my absolute favorite avenue. I had somebody years ago that asked me to help create an app based on chemistry of food and wine pairing.
Oh.
And, I went through all these apps, and what I was finding was there was no interest in pairing everyday foods. So, it's great if you do, you can talk pairings with Coca Van and Riesling all day long, but I would say if I'm eating nachos,
What am I going to pair with?
I want my wine to not ruin my nachos, and my nachos not ruin my wine.
Yes.
So it really is about finding what you eat, looking at the base chemistry. That's the only thing that matters. So when we're about to do a class based on the science of flavor and chemistry of food. That's probably a very close second to my favorite experience, and really looking at how flavors come together and the science of what food puts in front of us. So with Cheez-Its, one of my favorite things to eat, I love snack food.
Okay.
Anybody in the world that knows me knows that my favorite pairing, potato chips and champagne.
Oh, okay.
And the better the champagne, dirtier the potato chips, right? Nothing but grease and salt. So
With your fingers?
Yes.
Yes.
So when we look at foods like this, Cheez-Its, even though you have complex flavor profiles, quite honestly, you're getting notes of cheese, you're getting this, kind of breadiness, the textural feel. You're also being driven heavily by salt.
Mm-hmm.
So the reason we love these kind of treats are because they're little salt bombs.
Yeah.
When you look at salt, you want to look for wines that have naturally high acidity.
Okay.
So high acid, which is salt, is the product of a base.
Okay.
So it's the product of a base neutralization.
Okay.
So that base interacts with the acid in a way that it brings that acid in the wine down to a reasonable level. The salt comes down to a reasonable level as well.
Okay.
Nobody wants to sit down with just salt or just acid.
Right.
We want to find balance.
Nice.
So
Nice. So what's your pairing?
So this is our Ghost Traps. This is a blend of Marsanne, Roussanne, Sauvignon Blanc, and just a little hint of dry orange muscat. So a lot of acidity present, very little to no barrel aging.
You barely have to like put your nose
Yeah,
over
it's
its flat.
beautiful.
Yeah, you don't have to. It just, whew. This is one I think I've taken home the last 3 times in the ground because I love it. When it's available because it sells out.
Oh,
This one does not get old for me. And,
That's
you know,
cool.
again, we gave it the name Ghost Traps. This is our nod to my favorite San Antonio ghost story.
Yes.
I am a sucker for a good urban legend, for a ghost story. We even name after some of our monuments, our landmarks. Hemisphere was the site of the World's Fair in 1968. One of my favorite reds is the Confluence, which is the tagline from the 68 World's Fair, but it's the confluence of civilizations. So we like to pay homage back to, you know, the stories that make San Antonio unique. And this is a wine we produce in every vintage, changes year to year. Let's try it.
Oh, wow. I thought Ghost Tracks was perfect on its own. It's beautiful with the
Oh,
cheese.
it really does bring out the salt for me.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
Oh, you feel like you're eating now like a fancy cracker.
Not just cheese.
You really start to get like that kind of tangy tart cheddar note underneath. It kind of pops right up, right?
Cheddar. Yes, not dust, not cheddar dust.
Pair a really nice wine with cheeses.
This is beautiful. This is beautiful. I absolutely love it.
Thank you. I do too.
Okay, I have a couple of like quick sip questions.
Okay.
Off the top of your head, you have a day off in Texas. You're going out to the hill country. Which winery are you visiting?
One of my favorites at the moment. I was actually there in the hill country yesterday. As often as I can go through a Dega Vino.
And the artwork, everything. I love that.
Their wines just really speak to my palate. They are one of my at the very top of that list.
Is it the Portuguese influence?
Oh,
Yeah, you know, I just feel like they work with a lot of varieties that have a lot of structure, but they have a very elegant hand.
Yeah.
So they really kind of take that rustic kind of masculine approach to the variety.
Yeah.
And they have a very feminine, smooth, rounded spin to it. They're very good at pulling, you know, stylistic in. I would also, let's see, I would visit one of my personal favorites, Hilmy. Obviously, Hilmy is where I do my wine production.
I love the partnership. I went there, they talked about you.
Yeah.
And so when
thank
you
you.
go to places and they have great things, to say, it's
Yeah.
incredible. It's incredible.
We're seeing so much change in the hill country right now. You know, some of my all-time favorites. I have Farmhouse Vineyards in Johnson City, little off the beaten pathway. Tatum Cellars in Johnson City. I love Josh's wines.
Yes.
Not
Haven't been yet.
Thank you.
I love his wines, but he's really curated an ultra little intimate experience
really
there.
is.
It's a neat little stop.
It really is.
Ron Yates Winery is hands down one of my favorites in the state. I think Ron does great things. His winemaking team is second to none.
It's a team. It really
Yes,
is.
they really are.
Yes, it really is.
Spicewood, I don't get up there as often as I'd like because it's a little further out, but you know, my husband and I were married there. It was really one of my first true like Texan loves.
Incredible. Incredible. I do want to talk just 1 minute about this beautiful wall.
Yes.
And I know this is where you feature your Texas wines and wines from all
Yes.
over. And I stood here, we looked at this amazing wall with a winemaker. I was like, gosh, I've had this, I've had that. You know, what would you take? And he just kind of looked at me and he's like, I take this one because they pulled the vines. He's like, she's probably the last person in
Yeah.
Texas to have this wine. I was like, okay. He says, well, I don't here anymore because we pulled the vines. And then he said, and I would take this one because Jen made it and these wines came from. And I was like, oh my gosh.
So when we do bottled wines, we only do 2 a year under our label.
Okay.
They're meant to be our little bit of a long-term aging
Good.
expression, right?
Okay.
Other than that, I look for wines that I always say everything we carry is Texas grown, Texas produced. We look for things that I always say micro producer.
Yes.
One of my favorite wines on this wall right now, it's the Cellar Rat Poco Loco. Sold out everywhere. I'm sitting on the last 3 bottles, I think, in
Really?
existence.
Really?
I think he only made 200 cases total, and it is a stunning wine with just the perfect amount of age. It's drinking
Wow.
super beautifully.
Well, you might knock out those.
Yeah. Taking one.
We look, like I said, we look for micro producers. We're looking for really small. One we are sold out of right now, but coming back this week. The Berg, Remy Imler, very young female winemaker, also working at Becker Vineyards, ultra talented. It was a wine that just blew my mind. It's her red blend. It's stunning. And again, you get mouthfeel, elegance, complexity, soft. It's just a pretty wine.
Incredible.
Then we look for macro producers, but we like to show Massinov consistently makes some of the best dry wine in the state, but the wines that most people are really seeing are their sweeter production in
Yes.
or their grocery
Yeah.
level production,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is still a quality
It's a
wine.
great, it's a great starting thing. Absolutely.
But if you go to Messina Hoff and do like their library tasting,
Yeah.
which is
Very.
very reasonable.
Yes.
And the wines are fantastic.
I
They
recently
have years and years and years are pulling
I
stuff.
had a 2016 Cabernet Franc that might be the best wine I've ever had in Texas. No
Wow.
lie.
Wow.
So you have these gorgeous productions that nobody gets to see outside of their cellar.
Yeah.
We want to tell that story. So, the Beckers, Messina Hoff, even William Chris,
Mhm.
they do a
My
lot of,
amigos, the Soto brothers.
yeah, lot of volumes coming out of those places, but we want to bring the best side of their story here.
Absolutely.
Hopefully get people out to do that cellar tasting. That's where you're going to find the magic. Soda Brothers, 2 brothers. They're like my favorite
I
people
have
ever.
such a crush on them.
Everybody does. Get line, lady. They're wonderful. They're really talented guys.
They
and,
are.
They're doing very unique things. So
Their
those-
wine is always just like, when am I gonna
It's
open?
so unique. Yeah,
It's off the wall.
we like to carry things that we think are just changing Texas, even in small ways, in big ways. They're representing grapes that should be here. They're unique expressions to something. We really kind of look for a little bit of everything.
It's beautiful. Perdonalas. I see wine for the peoples with Ray.
Oh my God, Ray.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Ray Wilson, now we're gonna have to backtrack because leaving that off the list that's a sin.
Danny was the first time I had her wine. It was her bubbly at
Yeah.
bubbly class.
Yeah, she is bar none one of my
Yeah.
favorite winemakers in Texas. She's a great person. She does creative things. I love what she's doing. She has only in the last year taken over the Lost Straw tasting room in downtown Fredericksburg. She has really made that a beautiful experience. It's a chic, like stunning place, very clean looking, lots of clean lines. It does nothing but highlight wines. But she was actually here this week, and we have 3 more of her wines coming in.
Incredible.
I've always loved her wines, but this new vintage just really
And
blew me away.
I love to see in Texas, they are lifting each other up. Fellow
Yeah.
winemakers lifting each other up. We go to places, we go to tasting rooms. Oh, do you know Jen and, San Antonio?
Yeah.
Absolutely, we do. So we hear your names. We hear it in other tasting rooms. I love to.
Oh,
see
your
great homage to
reputation.
them.
Oh.
So yeah, it really is a beautiful, friendly Texas
It's,
experience.
it's a
and-
family.
Yes,
It's a
absolutely.
family. And, there are people that I run into. I know I can call
Yes.
if I need anything. Ben Calais, when we were opening, we were scrambling to get some barrel racks and a barrel. And,
Yes, yeah.
he was the first one, not just there to, provide for me. And he was actually the first Texas winemaker through our doors before we were even open.
Wow.
He and his wife, Victoria, who I adored and worked with her.
Wonderful.
We worked with for years. They were here as we were setting up to open. And, not only did he help me out with this very fast turnaround need, he loaded it on my truck, strapped it down, made sure I got it safe.
Yes.
In a very French way, just told me he was going to do it better than I would. And I was like, that's fair. You are very correct in this.
So, yes.
So, it is a family, and there's no point that I don't feel like I could call, people that have been in my orbit for over a decade and ask for help and they would not show up. There's always, it's a very collaborative community.
It's wonderful.
Raise a glass and toast to you, Jen.
Cheers,
I'm
ladies.
so
Very good,
excited.
Jen. Yes, thank you. I love it.
Yeah, I still have this one to finish.
Delicious. Okay, thank you. Cut. I think that's it.
So I got to tell you this story. Many years ago.
Let me turn my video off, then you can, then you